And here we are. We are live with this quite epic chat for us. But as far as we're concerned, it's another day, another conversation with another group of very interesting people. This time, old people. So, we're good. Uh, so, this is quite an epic lineup because it's one of those things. Terry was saying earlier that SEOs don't seem to actually retire unless you kill us off. We don't stop. Um, and looking around this lineup, it's kind of true, isn't it? All the people that we knew that were successful in the 90s pretty much are still around. There's a few who've gone by the wayside or moved on to other things. Jill Whalen is probably the most prevalent example. But it is very few. The others are sadly, people like Ted Stewart have passed on. But otherwise, yeah, it's surprising how many people who were pioneers back then are still around and still kicking butt.
And of them, I'm probably the oldest.
I'm going to let you have that honour. Nobody's going to fight you for that.
I was just wondering if it's maybe because we're not qualified to do anything else anymore.
It could be. I don't know. I would actually bet on a lot of the SEOs to manage just about anything. Most of the ones who are still around, they're running their own companies. They could be running any kind of company.
Oh, yeah.
I think we just stumbled on something we thought was fun and we're enjoying it and it works for us. Why quit?
Well, I think also a big part of this is we got in, we started businesses, and now none of us could actually hold a job.
That's kind of what I'm going for. Yeah.
Can't even hold the SEO jobs long. Everyone moves along eventually.
Well, we say that, but then there's Bill. Bill works for a company.
Well, there's a lot of people that hold really nice positions in companies, but if you started an SEO company, unless somebody came by with a lot of money, you're working for yourself for a very long time.
Yeah. I would be tempted by the right job again, but not for an agency. But I do like some of the in-house experience sometimes. The way that you can really get into the nitty-gritty of a company and its politics in a way no outsider ever can. It can be very difficult and frustrating for any agency. It can be very difficult even for a consultant who goes into them to really cut through the layers. It's when you're in-house that you get a real feel for, okay, yeah, this person's jurisdiction, this is how you don't step on their toes, this is how you get it done.
Well, I mean, a lot of us in-house SEOs. I know I did. My first 5 or 6 years were all in-house with Net Mechanic. I mean, you kind of wear about 15 different hats. You develop a lot of different expertise by doing it.
Mm-hmm. I really like the people I work with right now, too, and enjoy sharing new ideas and trying new things. And we're doing some of that. I appreciate it.
Well, there's a lot of people that really like being in a company structure. For pay-per-click, for instance, I have David Satella. He's my VP of pay-per-click. And my VP of organic is this guy you might have heard of, Dwayne Forrester.
Yeah.
So,
ex-lumberjack.
Yeah, there's a lot of expertise out there that really want to get into agencies that were in-house or vice versa. And when you find the right environment, it works well for you.
My thing with that is that in-house, I get bored in a year. I can get the most done, but I get bored. There's very few companies who are big enough to keep me challenged for more than a year, in the right way. I love that with an agency of freelancing, I am working on different projects all the time. My brain is always active. And in-house, I don't know, it's nice in the short term, it really is, to really go deep on a campaign, but yeah, I couldn't take it for much more than a year.
Well, there's something appealing about. I was going to say,
Go, Stoney.
there's something appealing about thinking of focusing on one client and one client only, and at the same time, probably gets boring after a while. But you know, when you're as an agency, we do a lot of work with different people. Sometimes you just go, man, if I only had that one, I could do so much more. You know, kind of an unlimited budget mindset, because that's all you're doing is that one person or that one account. So I could see, you know, the appeal to that kind of a thing.
It's incredible what you can do. I mean, the first time I worked in-house for a company, it was a small startup. It was one of the early consumer opinions websites in Europe. E-Opinions had already been big in the States, but it only focused on the US audience. And I worked for one that was across Europe. And it was fascinating. And in that year, we took them from startup to top 10 in the UK, Nelson Net Rankings, top 10 UK shopping sites. Overnight, we knocked Hotmail off of the #1 spot for email briefly. And it didn't matter what you searched for, somewhere in the top 5 results was an opinion from DU there, because the quality of the stuff people were sharing was fantastic. And that was it. A lot of what I did wasn't SEO, it was community management, it was improving the quality of the stuff. And that is the part of being in-house I love. The variety is why I like agencies.
I like working with the different kinds of clients, you know, not just on certain verticals and stuff. And there's a lot of skill development in different areas when you're forced to work in a completely different niche industry. If you work on the same site all the time, you kind of almost get formulaic on what works for that. And working in the different industries sort of forces you to expand out and learn new ones, and all of a sudden you see new opportunities and, oh wow, that would work for this other site that I never even thought about. So sort of from a cross-pollination, cross-growth perspective, I like working on the different sites. That's why I like the ending. But like I said, I started in-house for the first 5 or 6 years, and that does, you learn a lot, and thrown on your shoulders because you're like, bring us traffic, make it work, make us, make it perform. Kind of turn it loose.
And I certainly do remember Net Mechanic. I mean, that was a big site in the early days. That was a big old project.
Well, I mean, it was the first site. We had a lot of tools for webmasters, but one of our biggest success stories was our newsletter. Believe it or not, back in the '90s. We had 100,000 subscribers back then, and it was cool. I mean, I loved working with email marketing back then. Every time we'd send out a newsletter, we'd see this spike in our sales. So it worked then, it works now. So a lot of the things that worked back then have continued to work. That was early content marketing, from my perspective. We didn't call it that back then, obviously.
Yeah, just getting a little bit of sound feedback. Bill, if you can turn your speakers down just a bit, or if you can use some headphones, because it was basically your mic is picking up the speakers. Going over, Kristin. We're going to open up the spare seats in a minute, because that's one of the things we do. We never know exactly who's going to come in, who's going to join us, and that's a tradition that we like to keep up. But first of all, let's kick off in the traditional format for us. And very simply, let's start with Bill. What have you been up to this week, Bill?
Okay, one of the things I'm working on is a new Google Plus group on the Knowledge Graph. I'm joining Barbara Starr. She invited me to co-moderate it, and given the Knowledge Graph's API release that came out a couple weeks ago, it's a good time to get involved. If you've had the chance to work with the API to get an API key, it's really interesting exploring, doing some search that are connected to each other. I think it signals a whole different element of SEO that most people haven't been getting too involved with yet. The knowledge graph does show a lot of information that we don't typically think of as normal SEO, and we've got to start thinking more of it in that way.
Yeah. Cool. Terry, what's your week been like? What have you been up to this week? Because I know you won't been taking it easy for New Year's and the holidays. No. You're muted, Terry.
This week, still developing, doing the same thing. I don't do a lot of SEO these days. Just in what I do, developing, 2 or 3 sites a month, I guess. And then there's bigger programming jobs that I've been working on about 3 months now.
Cool. Mind you, you kind of seeded that because, you know, your original nickname, Webmaster T, it wasn't SEO T. No. You made clear where your focus was.
I'm very, to me, like if I have to go chase links to make a site rank, I didn't build the site right. That's the way I've always looked at things. Sites should be sticky. You shouldn't have to, you know, be the loudest voice out there yelling, you know, that your site's the best. People should find it, and it should be other people telling them. So I've always gone on, build a good site, and the people will come.
Yeah. I think there's certainly still a lot of truth. A lot of the thing, this is something Kristin was saying before we went live, you know. A lot of the SEOs who had their act together in the 90s, a lot of the same stuff is still working. We always talk about how much it changes, but actually a lot of the fundamentals stay the same. Isn't that right, Kristin?
Absolutely. I mean, going back from, I started doing usability tests as I started SEO marketing, but that's always been kind of my components. We're doing like even the site audit, I do usability assessment as well with 5 testers. And I have found that, you know, especially with people that are about to go through a redesign, you know, find out what's working on their site and then look at the comps developing and make sure that they are actually answering what the visitor, the target audience, is actually looking for and make sure it's easy to use. That you asked about what we were doing, you know, I do a lot of site audits, and I think a lot of us do, but one of the things I've been really focusing in on is as they go through, you know, a lot of them want a site audit right before they do a redesign or as they launch that redesign, but making sure that that transition period goes as smooth as possible. It seems like that's, in sites going through redesigns, it seems like the launch period is one of the most critical times. That seems like when they lose traffic, they do just dumb things. They don't do their redirects. You know, they do all kinds of crazy things that, unless you've got an SEO on board, or, you know, kind of like looking over what's going on. Most, you know, no offense to web developers, but a lot of them, they don't think about, you know, what happens when your URLs change on every page on the site. You know, they don't put that forwarding address or that redirect, telling the search engines where to go. So I feel like, you know, that's a lot of the part of what we've been doing, and that's a big part of our component of our work, and the user testing, making sure that that new design actually answers the mail and is easy to use. I mean, it's amazing. Even some of these, you know, one column, the mobile friendly, they hide some of the internal pages, you know, trying to scale down the navigation. They don't realize what's the most important thing that's the user coming to that site, whether they be mobile or from a desktop. You know, make sure that whatever the most important thing is very prominent and easy to find. Lots of user testing and site audits is what I've been doing lately.
Hopefully Kim is in the audience because she loves to hear usability get its due.
Oh, yeah.
And a fellow horse fan, of course. So,
Oh, Kim and I are good friends. When we're not talking usability, we're talking about horses. So Kim's a great friend.
yeah. Is your website horse friendly? You know, can a horse use your website? This is important to know.
This is important. Can I access your website while I'm riding a horse on the trail?
That actually is the kind of thing, you know. That's the definition of mobile friendly. Can I use it in the car? Can I use it on a horse? Yeah, absolutely. I'll come to you in a moment, Steiny. But Bruce, I mean, it's almost the catchphrase of your company. That wonderful thing about, you know, our job isn't to make pigs fly; it's to genetically modify the site to become an eagle.
Yeah, there you go.
So I know that these are things that are big for you as well, and have been for many, many years. Do you think usability still gets enough focus for most companies? The problem is that I find a lot of them throw money at SEO because all they're thinking is, we need more traffic, we need more people.
No, I don't.
Thinking about, actually, look, if you're converting 2%, maybe it's quicker to convert 3% than to get 50% more people.
Yeah, I don't think usability gets anywhere near the budget segment that it should. I mean, it literally can make the difference. Like you said, if you can up the conversion by making that site more usable, easier to find a product on the page or a piece of content, if it's a content site, whatever, you know, much, much easier. I mean, it's amazing how websites will hide. There we go. Loving the conversion on usability testing. I like it. I agree. Like I said, you have a segment on usability testing when I'm doing a site audit, and for our clients, we do a lot of live user tests, and we'll do it on in different areas of the site with different tests over the course of the year, depending on the type of the site. The different tests for, you know, the different site intent, make sure that the thing works. But no, I don't. I wish they would give more budget for it.
Usually you have to sort of sneak it through, don't you, as conversion analysis, because you can put a lot of usability into, of course, conversions, because a lot of the time what's stopping conversions is the fact they can't use your site.
Yep, that's funny you mentioned that. That's actually how when I describe it in the write-up, it's conversion analysis.
Yeah. So, Stoney, how important these days would you say usability and conversions are for you in SEO? Oh, we've got Kim joining us as well.
Yeah, I mean, for SEO, you know, for rankings, that's up in the air. I mean, I think as much as Google can or would want to use that data, they will. But just for pure web marketing, web presence, growing your business, you know, when somebody comes to us for SEO, I know they don't just want rankings, they want to grow their business. So conversions is a huge important part of that. We've taken some clients and we've, you know, looked at their site and said, hey, you know, there's probably some issues here, and then so we set up some user tests, ran them through some scenarios, and came back with a whole lot of actionable recommendations like, hey, do some of these different things here, and that's going to help improve your conversion rates, and we've seen that. You know, as they start implementing some of these things that come back from real live users and the data that we get from analytics, you see some of that, the increase in the conversion metrics, which, you know, ultimately, as much as we, you know, they may go, well, gee, maybe we don't have the #1 rankings that we want, they see those conversion increases and they see their revenue go up, they're happy. You know, so that's oftentimes where the client doesn't always know what they want, but you give them what they really need, and that's going to satisfy them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always has been one of the things that managing, you know, we talk about it all the time, managing client expectations, and a lot of people think that's just about telling them, look, you're not necessarily going to rank #1, but it isn't. It's so much more about, look, you want to get more business, just throwing more people at it won't do that, because you've already got the most interested, the highest converting people are the ones that, therefore, you're probably reaching because they're the ones having to dig the hardest.
Yeah.
More visible only gets idler people to you, and if you're not converting the dedicated, how are you going to convert them?
Yeah. Well, and that's that's important, is to really, you talked about setting up the expectations, and I think as an SEO that is one of the hardest things that we do. I mean, everything that we do with setting up strategy and implementing and getting results, dealing with clients' expectations is one of the most difficult, because no matter what we do, they think what they want to think. And it's hard to break through that and say, listen, you've got to temper the expectations based on, time frames, based on your budget, based on who your competition is. All of these things really do matter.
Cool. Hey, Kim, how are you? I
Good.
thought the usability would get you in here.
Oh, yeah.
But you're another one from the back in the day, and still going, and it's surprising sometimes that people haven't learned all the stuff we were talking about back then and made us redundant. And yet, A, they never do, and B, even though the changes aren't fundamental, the kind of changes that there are, there's new technologies coming out all the time. People are finding new ways to throw JavaScript and throw problems onto their site every single day. So it's kind of that thing, the minute you make something idiot-proof, nature throws a better idiot at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, mobile definitely is throwing a wrench into everything.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening with the changes with WordPress, of course, as well. As you know, WordPress, one of the strongest supporters of PHP for a long, long time, and now they're moving to JavaScript stacks.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. You mean now I have to go and learn get to another? I won't use it.
Not necessarily, but you're going to have an API. You're going to have an API, and then you can work whatever language you like to work it through the API. But sometimes it's awkward having that API, isn't it?
I've never heard anything so simple.
Sorry, Terry, I didn't know that was going to be a big surprise for you.
Hey, I quit doing ASP for the same reason. Company keep changing their platform. I don't need to work with it. I like to learn something once and move on.
Got a comment from Dave Pipe who says, I still cringe at using mobile-friendly sites, but then this old dragon is used to having 10+ tabs open in his browser, right-clicking links to opening a new tab. Absolutely. I mean, I am not a mobile person, really. I'm just not. I am much more a dedicated PC user. But there are times when you want that quick access. And a lot of people are sat with multi-screens at the same time now. How many people, your partner or yourself, you're watching TV, something comes up, you grab the tablet and you're doing it while looking at the TV. That is a much bigger thing these days, and that's where advertising has been moving, isn't it? Multi-screen, multi-touch. I do think that's still one of the big challenges. I put it down as sort of last year's resolution that it was the biggest to integrate cross-channel marketing. It didn't happen completely in 2015. I do think it was one of the big trends, but I think we're still to grapple with it, aren't we?
One of the things I think we all need to remember is Google makes no money from organic results. They only make money on pay-per-click. And their entire focus seems to be to figure out how to make the systems faster and work better in environments where they can make more money. I think that the reason Google is so supportive of mobile right now is that this is a new environment and they can set the standard saying 1 organic and 3 pay-per-click. They can control the format of the desktop a little bit better, of the mobile device desktop. And if they do what I think they're going to do, we're going to find from an SEO point of view that if you're not in the very, very top, you're not going to show up. the thing that I see as one of the biggest risks for us as SEOs is actually voice search. I think voice search is going to change what people do with a mobile device to the point where perhaps there won't even be an organic result on that device. And that could really change our entire platform going forward.
I don't see the FTC letting that happen.
I don't know. In my house, everything is voice search, from the kids to the adults. We all use artificial AI on our smartphones, and like even riding in a car, if somebody has questions, the kids will be, okay, Google, and right away. That's just, maybe we're a little ahead of the game.
Doesn't allow that.
I think
But
that really plays
tried
to.
to do that for years, and the FTC has stopped them every time. It won't happen. I can see them pushing organic down with which they already have done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, there's no organic listings above the fold much anymore, unless you're on a really wide screen, high resolution.
Right.
You're at 1,000. You're not seeing any organic results above the fold anyhow. And for me, that was always my personal yardstick for success, but they've taken it all.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yeah.
How does Snapchat fit in with search?
By people sometimes using Snapchat while searching. That's no direct.
Like, there's nothing really like connecting it, right? I mean, I haven't been able to figure that out.
Lots of sites use search, but yeah, it's got no special relationship with Google or Microsoft for search terms. But what you were saying about the mobile, Kim, that comes directly back to what Bruce was saying about there's no money in organic, and right now there is no money in OK Google. Because we would really distrust Google to sell one answer. When there's only one answer, it has to be ironclad organic. Unless we've asked for a company's website. And if we've asked for it, then trying to charge a toll for that would be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
I think that organic results are always going to be there, even on a desktop, if the information you're after will not conveniently fit on half a page, Google won't give the answer. I mean, if you ask, how do you do SEO, Google isn't going to throw up a knowledge box or an answer box and answer that. They're going to just give you websites. Now, I have seen it's bigger than that. I think that even on a desktop now, if you search for internet marketing, now that Google has forced you to have your local turned on, you can no longer set, for instance here, we set it to United States. I can no longer do that. My local is always wherever my internet cable is connected. And I found that even for internet marketing, we're starting to get the maps. We're getting place type results, and which works out real well for me here, but it doesn't work out well for me in New York. And I think we're going to start seeing Google not just go mobile, but go both mobile and local simultaneously, and those are going to change the dynamics of national companies. They're going to change the dynamics of mobile. All sorts of things are going to be upset if Google believes that for that query you wanted a local presence. And they're going to give local presence precedence, and the rest of organic will just have to catch up.
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons why when Bruce Clay was asking for my opinion of what the big trend is this year, context came up so high for me, is because that's absolutely key in getting mobile right. Because I'm in Boston, I'm about to fly home, I'm searching for something for when I get back. Now I'm expecting local results because I live where I live. I'm only in Boston for the moment, but I'm not expecting Boston local. And the fact that I can't get around that is one of those bits of context that Google's going to need to grapple with, to give us ways of sometimes knowing we want the thing where we are, and sometimes knowing that we want the thing where we usually live when we're away from home. And I think context is going to be the big playing ground for the next couple of years in all search.
I think that one of the things that's driving this, I think Google has probably figured out when they started making local results the way pay-per-click came up, that many of the top pay-per-click results were local results to the searcher. As soon as that started happening, I think that we found that Google was more successful, that the pay-per-click revenues were probably better, and they're just moving it into organic.
To me, it's common sense. If I'm searching for a lawyer, the only place I want one is Ontario. Anywhere else, if I needed a lawyer in Dallas, I'm going to put Dallas in the query. Like, that's common sense. Like, to me, anyhow. Like, that's what the searchers want too. So, people who try and be dodgy and get ranked in cities where they can't really supply, well, that's stupid. Right? That's a waste of your effort.
I think with voice search, that's actually easier. Most of the time we're going to want it where we are because it is. We can easily say no, back home, and Google will understand that. We're fine with refining it quickly through conversation. I think the problem becomes much more with that tricky one, John, because Google don't always treat tablets as mobile. And it's one of those ones where that's tricky for everybody. Do we class a tablet as a very small laptop, which is probably at home? Do we treat laptops as devices which can as often be mobile as not? Speaking as somebody who, when I was last with an agency in London, was traveling with my laptop everywhere and working on the train a lot of the time. That would have been fun for Google Local. Every 5 minutes, I've got a completely different location. That is a real tricky one, isn't it, John? How many how many people are grappling and fighting at Google about exactly what they mean by mobile?
About 42.
Always the perfect answer to life to mean you.
I don't know. I totally missed the context of the rest of this discussion. So I'm just...
No worries. I hope you had a great Christmas, a Happy New Year, or starting to have a very Happy New Year.
Yeah, so far so good.
So,
I could swear I read somewhere that Google's definition of mobile was smartphone, that laptops and tablets were excluded from that. And that's what I've been telling my clients, but I cannot remember where I got that. I probably got it from Google somewhere.
I think that's probably the case, but especially with tablets, that's something that's probably going to evolve a bit, especially as more and more devices kind of blend in between with like the traditional tablet and the traditional phone, where they're almost the same size. You can use them interchangeably. And then there are the tablets that are essentially have a higher resolution than my desktop computer. So it's
well, even the difference between a smartphone and a phablet, as they call them, the very large screen phones, which are usable as a tablet. It's such a complex world, and it's only going to get more complicated in the next few years as more and more devices that we haven't been talking about before start to come in. I mean, hopefully we won't ever have to optimize sites to appear on a watch screen. Let's face it, I don't want
that scares the heck out of me.
But what about like a direct brain interface where you don't even need like a screen? I think that would be the optimal case. And I mean, in any case, you guys are all like at the bleeding edge of technology anyway. You're used to all of these changes. So kind of coming in and saying, "Oh, I hope things don't change anymore." I don't. That's like your parents.
That's how you make money. Change it all you want.
We embrace change. Let's face it.
Yes.
You can't be
Very
in
much
this industry.
so.
Yeah, just don't talk about WordPress.
Or ASP. But it is going to be very interesting. I mean, my next device that I'm expecting any day, because all the technology is there, is the earpiece that, you know, is a little Bluetooth earpiece that on its own can tell you, you know, be a constant stream of little information in your ear. It's going to be very difficult to tell the difference between people using that and people who are schizophrenic, but that's the device that I'm expecting any time. It's just, you know, I think of Siri and Cortana and Google Now as kind of a training set for that next thing, which is going to be more like, you know, Jarvis in the Iron Man films, that voice that is a constant little assistant.
I thought everybody heard voices.
But that's kind of a scary thing in its own right. And one thing as we move into AI is we forget that when you take on a servant or a slave, you take on a load of responsibilities. And it doesn't matter that this is a machine. You are now having this machine that knows all kinds of intimate details about your life. And we're already starting to suspect that. But I mean, everything, you know. A lot of your lies are now recorded on this thing that is actually watching you going around your life. Now, regardless of the company behind it, just the very fact that the device itself is supposed to help you and supposed to use what it knows about you to help you, but doesn't have that human thing of knowing when to keep its mouth shut.
Yeah, I use the artificial AI for Android, and it learns what you know, how, you know, after using it for a while, it learns about you, and mine tells really bad jokes. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Can you give us an example?
I don't know. She said something really stupid about the weather yesterday, and it took me a while to figure out that she was trying to joke around.
How funny.
Yeah, it's everybody in the family got into the artificial AI application, and it's definitely different. Mine went off in the middle of Barnes & Noble. She started talking to me, and people just kind of looked around. I forgot that she was on. So, you know, there's a lot, you know, learning curve, just learning to use these devices and to get used to having that with us all the time.
I think we're still a good number of years off a proper AI of any sort. Even quite a rudimentary, genuine AI. There's lots of ways to fake one, but they're pretty much, they're not much different to a Tamagotchi or a Furby at the moment. They're really not. You know, they're
Furby boom.
they're still quite basic. I think it's going to be a long time before they're doing much more than just responding to pre-programmed cues or things that they know are safe to play with.
Mm.
And I don't think you've got an AI until it can actually program itself and say, okay, this isn't the right way of doing something, you know, I need to change my behavior.
But I don't know if like having something that is completely automated is really the right answer, or if it makes more sense to have something that's kind of almost augments your abilities, kind of like an electric bike where you start the pedal and there's a motor that just kind of silently gives you like a push, or like we have in Google Photos where you search for some keywords and you didn't actually tag the pictures, but it kind of recognizes, oh, you kind of mean this, so we'll use all of this fancy technology to figure it out and give you the results you need without actually saying, well, there's this magical assistant behind the scenes that's helping you. It's kind of just a subtle way to augment the things you're already doing.
And if there has to be a trade-off, I would much rather go that way and still have a human hand in it, because I think the other the other way, like it's just giving up too much of the fail-safe.
Haven't we seen enough sci-fi movies to know that AI is just going to go all bad on us?
Exactly.
Apparently Google haven't.
I mean, I've seen enough computer demonstrations to know that like everything crashes all the time. So we're kind of safe in that regard.
Yeah.
Phew.
Years ago, I
I'm
worked
not
for
so
the
sure.
railways. Working for the railways, you learn what a fail-safe is and how important they are. Because the history of the railroad development is all about these fail-safes. And I was working for the London Underground, which tends to have more fail-safes than anything else. So automatic signals, a dead man's handle, all of these kind of things that mean no matter what goes wrong, if something fails, it fails in a safe position, i.e. the train stops if anything goes wrong. You do wonder whether Google have enough fail-safes in place. I think they're going to at the moment, but you do worry about these. Look, Google can run you over. It's got self-driving cars.
Well, now they're teaming with the automobiles too. They teamed up with Ford, so could be in Ford next year. Who knows?
And we all know about Ford.
Yeah,
Well,
so
the very
Sorry,
he's
tiny
right.
Chevy truck.
We could be assaulted by Google self-driving cars and Amazon's flying drones, and that's it. The human race is at war.
Well, doesn't the
But
very
what are they
nature-
gonna do? It's like throw toilet paper on us?
Doesn't the very nature of AI tell us that they can overcome this fail-safes? At some point, they get smart enough to go, oh, I'm just going to circumvent that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're not there yet, but isn't that a plausibility?
You certainly have to think, hang on, we're teaching this thing to think, and the only fail-safe against it is that we've programmed Asimov's 3 laws, say, into this thing.
But AI overcomes programming.
Yeah. Yeah, or builds a robot that doesn't have those 3 things in.
That's more likely to happen.
Aren't we all talking about the difference between Star Trek's computers and Skynet?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And that was the interesting thing, wasn't it? Star Trek's computers weren't actually that clever. I would say that Star Trek's computers, in the original series, were probably only as good as Google Now is now. That's it. That's as smart as they got. They could respond to questions.
But they can make like hot drinks.
But they read the script.
Yeah, but they didn't have a feel lucky button.
That could have been quite fun. Walk back to I feel lucky.
Oh my goodness.
Take over everything.
It's one of those things, you know. Geeks are sci-fi fans traditionally.
I am.
It's very rare to find an SEO, for instance, who can't have a conversation about Star Wars or Star Trek or even
Unicorns.
Sometimes, yeah.
The first one 20 years ago couldn't tell you anything about the story now.
Well, that's okay. You're retro. You like the original Star Trek, the original, maybe a little bit of Deep Space Nine. Did you see any of that? No. Oh, you kind of missed out.
How about Battlestar Galactica?
Which one? The original or the remake?
The original. Yeah, the original.
Original.
Yeah.
That was my station.
Yeah.
We're talking futuristic things. Have you guys played with any virtual reality little tools or things that you've enjoyed? I know I actually went to a mini maker fair this summer, and they had the coolest virtual reality welding machine. It was how they would teach the welding students to actually weld, and you actually got to put this thing on, and you felt like you were welding. It was actually
Wow.
Oh, cool.
cool.
Something I mentioned recently is Microsoft's new project with their virtual reality technology, where rather than going the way most people do, which is immediately to go into the games market, they're specifically looking for people to find genuine applications for this, preferably, work-related and not games, because they think that's much more important. So I've been following that.
Yeah, I think that's what appealed to me about this Wyld. I mean, that would happen to be an application that was used at a college for training. It was a local community college, kind of a tech college. But I thought that was a perfect application of virtual reality. And instead of all just games, because, I mean, I like games, but I like you were saying, the practical applications of this great new technology being used.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to make the Google Cardboard, because they give you instructions like how you can make it out of just simple supplies that you probably have around the house and wouldn't be too hard to pick up at Michael's or next door to neighbors. But I haven't done it. Have any of you?
No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have AI though.
I've used it. It's kind of fun. I haven't spent a lot of time with it, but it's an interesting idea, and it's, I think, a really easy way to get started with this, to let people start making software for it, let people start playing with the general theme, rather than having to spend $1,000 for some device that you might use for 10 minutes and not really find it that interesting. So this makes it a little bit easier for people to get started.
It's more accessible, and it also, because it's more accessible, I could just see like a classroom, like having that be like a big project of theirs. And how cool would that be to introduce these concepts?
I think they have some of that for classes, yeah. There's some program with cardboard for schools, but I don't know the details.
Cool.
So look into it.
I must admit, it is an exciting time, and not just in the Chinese sense. You live in interesting times. There's so much going on. There is, I've never felt more optimistic about the chasing in all directions, but maybe it's my age. I do have that little bit of nagging doubt when it comes to AI, and I know I'm not alone in that. That's the one, isn't it? That's the one where we might be making ourselves redundant, evolutionary, sort of speaking.
Well, I think there's a fear curve. I mean, a lot of people aren't convinced that Google isn't tracking their every move, the privacy and the security. And now we're getting into AI. A lot of things are going to take years. We might be looking at the horizon and going, wow, this is really cool, we want to learn more. But I think the general public is standing a lot behind us. They might not even be as interested in it as we are.
Huh.
It's one of those things.
One of the main uses of AI right now, basically, for crunching big data. Isn't that the biggest use of it? Anyways.
It's interesting because, one of the things with AI, when do the government start to say, right, well, do you know what, let's start monitoring people for signs of this and signs of... We kind of get into that Minority Report situation, don't we? Where, okay, if they've been searching for how to hide a body, and they've recently been to a hardware store, maybe, and bought a lot of industrial cleaner and a new carpet, now's the time to send the FBI around.
Okay, but anybody who's searching how to hide a body, they deserve to get caught. Don't.
That's famous because a couple did. That's exactly what they did.
Well, the best place to hide a dead body is Google Plus, right?
Yeah, page 2 of the search results.
Or page 2 of the search results.
On MSN, nobody will see it there. I trust Google mostly, but what I don't trust is governments. And as long as Google needs to have offices somewhere, then governments can put a lot of pressure on. And, quite frankly, I don't expect to know right now how much pressure is being put on. We know of instances where, well, let's look at the situation where Twitter was asked to give up all the information on somebody from WikiLeaks, and forbidden to let them know about it, that they were being asked for it.
And Facebook too.
Yeah. You know, what things could be going on right now that, you know, we don't know about. Ultimately, I think it's more important than ever that we really start to vote responsibly. And I'm looking at anyone who thinks Donald Trump is a good idea here. You know, voting responsibly and the American politics system don't seem to go together sometimes, do they? Would you trust Donald Trump with the kind of technology we've already got and the kind of data gathering we've already got not to abuse it?
He's not the only one I don't trust.
An eagle doesn't even like him. If an eagle doesn't even like Trump. I'm sorry.
Well, that was his own fault for getting the eagle as a symbol of the country, and then the eagle actually acted like the country. Or much of it would like to.
Take your hair off? Sure. Let's see what's underneath there.
Well, personally, I don't think he'll be any worse than any of the others. He's got a bigger mouth. That's all.
Well, the only advantage I think Trump has is that he will probably fire everybody.
Yes.
Good point.
For that reason alone, I might vote for him.
Yeah, maybe I want to change my vote.
Right. Yeah, but replace them with who?
Anybody.
AI.
Yeah.
How smart the guy is. He spent $200,000 on his campaign, and Jeb Bush has spent $37 million. Who's the smart guy? Trump, in my opinion.
No. I'm never going to go that far, Terry. Basically, I don't care what he spent, he's made himself visible and people have got to hear what he has to say. Any amount you've spent on that is a waste when all you've got to say is the stuff he's said so far.
What I see there is a personality, like any other entertainer on TV. That's what he is.
Yes.
Right? Who's to say when he gets into government, he doesn't do something entirely different? They all do.
Of course. But I don't know that I want to vote for Ronald McDonald in the first place. If somebody's acting like a clown, that's a good reason not to vote them in. Regardless of how entertaining they are, politics isn't supposed to be entertaining. These are the people who do control the tone of our country and how our country is viewed. And I do think that's just too important to mess about with. We're getting deep into politics here. We shouldn't really. But, you know, what is AI going to think about our politics and our legal systems? Because so much of it doesn't make sense, does it? Isn't that the scariest thing about AI, is that finally, you know, we may be inventing our own child to look at the emperor's clothes and laugh at our naked asses. What will AI think of us?
Maybe it'll just facepalm and say, "Oh gosh, let me turn myself off.
Double
I want to be
facepalm.
reincarnated in a different world."
Yeah. So that's obviously the thing. When you invent AI, as soon as you're getting close, you also need it to have a robotic arm so that it can facepalm properly.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essential.
You know, the thing about our AI to me is that it's artificial. And as somebody who is in the human factors, you know, field and you know, the better people in the usability and user experience, we're empathic. So, you know, we look at everybody. We consider everybody. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of feelings. And I don't think that AI is going to get into the feeling part. I just don't think it can. That's going to be a limit.
Yeah. Well, we are getting towards the top of the hour, so I'm going to sort of start winding us down. But we've certainly got in some interesting directions, as we all want to do. But we've sort of done the you know, we've all probably done these prediction posts for everyone else. I know this time of year we all kind of end up doing them. What's the single most important thing you won't be changing this year? What's the thing that, is your reliable, not big news, but the thing you are going to keep doing this year, regardless? Let's start with my old friend Bill. If you can unmute, Bill.
Hello.
Bill. There we go.
He's a hologram.
No, I'm not a hologram. I do think there are people working to try to get artificial intelligence regulated in important ways, and to think seriously about where it's headed, how it's going, how it's regulated internally, and I've been getting tweets from people asking me why we're talking about Donald Trump, and I've been wondering the same thing. Not really have much. He doesn't really have much to do with SEO or technology, or regardless of him telling Bill Gates every once in a while, turn off the internet, stop these terrorists from saying bad things about us. I'm not seeing
it's simply
him.
because it's about the hands that technology and power gets into. And so far, most governments have tinkered with Google and Twitter and the amounts of data that they have. They have certainly put pressure on at times, but there's been limits, and I think it will only be a certain amount of time before those limits are pushed further and further, because that's the way human history goes. And that's what worries me about Google and its amount of data it's collecting. Is not that I don't trust Google with it, it's that I don't trust the governments that have power over Google. And that's...
I get worried at times when I see Senate hearings about technology, and they talk about the internet as if it's some foreign place that they have absolutely no familiarity with.
Yeah.
When there are 5-year-olds who know more about how the web works. And you see these people talking about the interwebs as they're a bunch of connected tubes.
Yes.
And they're making fun of themselves, but they're showing their ignorance of education and technology, and they should be taking classes to learn as much as possible, because it's a reality of our lives. We're connected.
Or hiring very good advisors to have that information always next to them. Maybe in a couple of years they'll have Google now telling them the answers, but yeah, that's why politics still comes up into this, is because you can't invent new technology without worrying about where it goes. That is the important lesson of Alfred Nobel and the Nobel Peace Prize. This guy wanted to save thousands of lives from people handling dangerous explosives, invented a safer explosive, which was promptly used in battlefields where previously explosives were too dangerous to be used on battlefields. And it was used to kill tens of thousands instead of save thousands. And, I think whenever we invent a new technology, it's not important enough to just worry about who's got it. Yeah, as we're saying, this idea of being able to look at how to weld and teach people how to weld, that exact same technology could be used by a terrorist organisation to distribute how to make a bomb. And these kinds of technology issues are things we do need to think about. If we don't, why should we think that the politicians are? Anyway, so what are we keeping up with this year, Bruce?
Well, I think that just as a data point, I was around when there were mainframes, and in walks this very first PC. And it's taken almost 40 years for it to get to the fact that the PC is being replaced by mobile. I see it as a natural evolution. And where there's an evolution, not a revolution, I think we have to, as an industry, adjust. to where people are going to be. Everybody has a mobile device. Many people have 2 mobile devices or more. I think that within a year, that is going to be where everybody lives. And if we as an industry don't adapt to that, then we're going to be, 5 years ago, doing SEO for desktops, and we're going to be left behind. So I think that mobile and local is the future for the next year to 2 years. I think that beyond that, we almost have no choice but to try to figure out how we're going to have AI integrated. I do think it'll take a couple of years. I do think that we're going to be doing a lot more stuff with holograms, and 3D printers are going to be everywhere. And how many of you used to have a fax machine and now you don't even care about it? How many ever had a modem? I mean, there are a few of us that even know what they sound like.
I remember the cradle modem that you actually put the phone receiver into.
I used to use one of them.
Yeah, acoustic couplers were everywhere, and I'm just looking out for a few years. If what we want to do as an industry is be where the industry is going, I think we have to understand the technology leaps. I think we have to understand the usability leaps. Those are going to be evolutionary. That means everybody's going to be talking to their refrigerator in a few years. Everybody's going to be able to walk into any room, turn on lights, and adjust their temperature. We already have people playing around with cars that drive themselves. I mean, all of this is going to evolve. The primary reason I think Google really, John, wants to have cars that drive themselves is because while the car is driving itself, you're going to be seeing Google ads all over the dashboard. I mean, you're a captive market. You can't get away from the Google ads in the Google car. And I see that as being the way the world works. And Minority Report, the way it was mentioned, exactly right. You're walking through a mall. They know who you are. They somehow have you connected. Your Bluetooth phone connects automatically to every billboard, and they hit you with a personalized ad. I think that's what's going to happen within a couple of years.
Well, I think it's going to be kind of pay-per-click. Somebody says, right, I'm going to go shopping. The car drives them to whoever's paid the most. Whichever store paid the most, that's where the car's going to go. And when you say, hang on, this isn't what I asked for, you look on Google Maps, there's no sign of the other store, it's gone.
I wish I knew people like that. Real quick.
Kristin, what's the thing that, what's your thoughts this year?
Well, I think along with what Bruce was talking about, the Internet of Things and the mobile direction, I think, building for mobile experience is going to be critical. I know a lot of my clients, we've been going through redesigns in the last year, and that seems the way it is. You're going to have to go that direction. I had to laugh when Bruce made the comment about how everything was hooking onto your phone. I had to go out and buy a new washer and dryer recently, and the sales guy was sitting there giving me a sales pitch on how the washing machine could be linked to my cell phone, my smartphone, and let me know when it was, off balance. And I'm thinking to myself, I would never in a million years hook my phone up to this washing machine. Why do I care if it's off balance? And but, you can kind of go overkill on this Internet of Things, but I do think there are a lot of applications. I know for in the house, adjusting the temperature of the house for different times in the day when you know you're going to be away. That's a very efficient way to do it, and if you can do it, via your phone from your office because you forgot to turn the temperature down, or you have it done automatically at a certain time, that's fantastic. I think that's a great way to go. But as far as the direction we're going, mobile optimization, the mobile experience is definitely huge. Reducing the download speeds so the sites are faster. And I think something Bill and I talked about a long time ago at a conference when we were talking in the hall one time. We were talking about SERP the experience on the search results page, and finding ways to make the site, when you can get a presence there, to have it improved. So if it's instant answers that happen to show up for some of the phrases related to a site, maybe finding ways of getting your site on there or in the knowledge graph better represented. Is it complete? Is the information accurate when it does show up? So looking at how the SERP results display and looking for opportunities to get some eyeballs on those pages.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think part of mobile optimization is going to be much more about the multi-screen experience, because the times that I will look at a site on my cell phone are usually when I want the contact details for the site. I don't want to fill in forms on my mobile. If I was going to do shopping on a mobile, I'd want an app that was designed for that purpose. And even then, it's not going to suit all kinds of shopping. A lot of the time, I want a quick answer now, and for it to be able to remind me when I'm on my home PC, right, this is where you want it to go. This is the form you wanted to fill in. Or, I'm going to pass this across to my tablet now. And I think that is going to become a big issue. I'm certainly already seeing that on some of the sites I'm working with, where I take into account the multi-screen strategy that somebody might first look at the site on mobile, offer them a way, detect that it's mobile, detect it's a small screen, and offer to send them a link to their email, which gets them to put in their email address. And you find that really gets a good take-up at the moment. Stoney, your thoughts for this year?
Well, I don't disagree with anything that the others have said about mobile, but I am keeping my laptop until I can do everything on a tablet that I can do with the laptop. I am not losing that thing at all. I'm keeping it with me. I think it's going to be a while before we see tablets able to have all of the functionality and all the things that we need to be able to do that you just can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things. I like my PC, and I can manage with a PC and a tablet. I'm better off with a PC and a laptop, but sometimes that's a little bit overkill. I don't know. I just sometimes view tablets as, look how fat that iPod has got. That's what it means to me. It's great for watching videos on or doing a quick little thing, but I couldn't do any serious stuff on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love it. I love it for reading. I love it for all the things that you can do, all the apps. But I cannot do real work on a tablet at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. Terry, your thoughts for this year?
For me, I don't think mobile, like all these devices. We had the arguments when mobile come that you need the two sites with two different contents. No, the content will always move with the devices. You'll only have to make one set of content. I truly believe it just becomes too expensive to run double platforms. And responsive design works. We figured that out. We'll do the same thing with the new devices. I truly don't believe that's going to change my job much. I'll have to think about the user. That will change. But what I actually work with, and that's the HTML and stuff, I don't see that changing much. Other than, adding in new stuff like the structured data and whatnot. I think that's going to play a bigger role than people really. Yeah, I agree with Bill that SEOs that aren't really looking at that don't really understand how much it disambiguates stuff. Like, I've seen instances where 5 addresses on one page using structured data, and Google knew all 5 locations based on that. That's pretty strong signals to me that that's what I want to be doing, because links are only going to get you so far, because any idiot can build a link. truly. You know, what's it take to actually send out an email and beg for a link? Because that's what most of it amounts to. I'd rather build it into the site and do things right. That's where
Given to you, I still do believe that context changes massively. Google serve you different results. You know, it's got a mobile experience that's different to the main search experience because it needs to be, and it's going to get more so. Google now is showing you a completely different way of understanding context from, you know, Google search, and I think that's going to become increasingly important. I do think one way, to bring this back to something Bruce said at the start, I think one way that Google really could massively monetize, and I don't mind saying it, like, they can use this, John, it's all right, is to offer to index sites for companies with Google Now, so that it can answer. It can be a shopping assistant on anybody's site. You pay Google a certain amount, it takes a cut of your but it can now allow shopping by voice on anybody's site. I think that could be a direction to go in.
Well, that's the end game, isn't it?
Yep.
Isn't that the end game for Google, actually?
I don't think it is.
Every transaction on the internet?
No, the end game is for Google to just buy your business. And Kim, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are on accessibility and user intent, which is getting to be, you know, a term that's used more often. I am also paying more attention to data-driven decisions. So, you know, for design work and for marketing work. I'm seeing a lot of things being done, like ads on mobile that cover up the content, distractions, and I think a lot of people aren't thinking or taking into consideration that in Europe, the UK, and America, the population is getting older. So there's a lot of the human side and how we use our devices that, you know, removing distractions, optimizing for how somebody like my mom, who is diagnosed with dementia, she's on Facebook all the time. Her experience and the things that she's searching for is going to be different and is going to be changing. So how do you design for that, for people like that? How do you market for people like that? So those are the things that I'm thinking about, is again, the people side. And accessibility, which is being worked into, you know, with HTML5. I'm happy to see that.
That's one of the really interesting parts about the intersection of AI and mobile, is the apps that can start to act as assistants for caring for people with special needs, people who've got dementia or Alzheimer's, where their mobile can let you know where they've gone wandering off to, and it can remind them of things. And I think that is certainly a very interesting and worthy place for that to be moving. But hopefully it won't get monetized too much. John, what are your thoughts?
I think there's still so much left to be done on mobile. I think like the big changes that so many sites made last year were a great first step. I think there's just so much more left to be done to really make them like really fantastically usable sites on mobile. But that's a lot of, I'd say, hard work, looking at data, looking at usability issues, all of that kind of comes together there. I suspect we'll just be talking about mobile on and on for a couple of years at least. Internet of Things is something that I find really interesting. On the other hand, I'm not really sure how much of that will actually end up being completely usable, because like home automation is something that's been around since, I don't know, the 70s or even before, where people try to automate the lights in their house or the shutters and all of that. And doing that with your smartphone, I don't know if that significantly changes things. Maybe it does a little bit.
I've never found a light switch. That's too difficult. I need something that I can use, because a light switch is I don't see the need. And it's the same thing with, you know, Hive. Wonderful, but I know how to set a thermostat. You know,
I don't know. I mean, maybe there are things that when you have the ability to put like a data center behind it, you can suddenly do different things. Where in the past, where it's essentially just like, well, if I pull this switch, then the light goes on, and if I pull the switch here, then the system knows that I want the light on. That's not a big change, but if there's like, I don't know, a smart system behind it, then maybe that changes a little bit. But I think there are a lot of small things that also add up there. So I don't know, at the moment I have a 3D printer running in the cellar that's being remote controlled by Raspberry Pi with a webcam, where it's I don't know, it's easy. It kind of saves me time from having to go downstairs and check that it's not doing something completely broken. But like all of these small things that are suddenly possible because it just uses Wi-Fi. It doesn't use anything fancy. I can use my laptop to look at all of this to make setting changes without having to have a special device for that. So those are things that might make it really interesting. With regards to mobile, one thing that I'm not really sure about how it will happen is I think, especially from India and China, Brazil, there's probably going to be a bit of more of a revolution than an evolution happening, in that there's just so many people coming online with on the internet there that are essentially going to double the size of the internet, or that have already doubled the size of the internet. And at some point, the whole English-speaking internet will almost be a minority. And how will that change the web? How will that change how we interact with the web when suddenly, instead of Facebook, we have something that comes from China, which Chinese people really love, which has kind of the Chinese philosophy behind it, which we have to kind of adapt on our side to get used to. So that kind of shift from just being an evolutionary change to maybe some revolutionary changes where we have to adapt to the foreign culture rather than forcing the foreign cultures to adapt to our culture. So I have no idea what's going to happen there, but I think that'll be really interesting.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the one thing we can all agree on is that it's going to continue to be a very interesting time to be around. There is so much potential. You can probably say that of any time in human history, but just somehow it does feel so much different, doesn't it? So, Kristin, you've been pretty quiet all this hangout. Why don't you give us your thoughts and take us out? And thank everyone for turning up this week, because it's been an absolute pleasure.
What an honor, thank you. Yeah, so I'm just taking a look at everything that everyone has to offer. And I really appreciate being able to just spend this time. I've heard so much about each one of you. And my thing that I'm going to not change is carrying on the message of accessibility, how accessible the internet is, and therefore makes people accessible. And so I think on that note, I will just thank everyone who has watched this and been with us, spent time, and everyone who will in the future. Thank you so much.
And that's it for this week, folks, and see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.